Good afternoon. Today is the 6th day of November 2016, and we are once again with our beloved Shyam Kumari.
Thank you,
Namaskar.
Narad, for having me. Actually, these days I was worrying that I have done these stories of about 500 people in the ashram and never had time for mine. This way, it will be
Good.
done, some aspects.
Well, this is the third interview with Shyam Kumari.
Yes.
So, what are you going to share with us today?
Last time I told you much about my childhood.
Yes.
There are two or three very sweet things with which I will start today. My first contacts with the mother, though they were not direct. When I was 7 or 8, a friend of mine lived opposite the house of Hero Vashist. I told you her sister has married Pearson, Richard's father.
Right.
And that family mother wrote to them, I need you here. The whole family here, they were educated here, 4 daughters, I think 2 sons, or at least one son was
This was,
educated in our
yes.
school.
And you know that Richard's father was going to leave one time. Richard's father was going to leave the ashram and wanted to take Richard. And mother said, I won't have it. He's my son.
See how beautiful. So, opposite their house, one of my school friends lived. I was 7 or so. And from time to time, she would tell me, today there is darshan celebration in Hero's house. Her name was Veer Kanta then. Their mother gave her the name Hero. And today I have to send flowers for them because this friend's house had many balsam trees, generosity. So she would collect a basket full and send to their house. And it left a very sweet and mysterious impression in my heart. Though I never went to their house, I think, never saw the photographs or anything. That was just a small thing. Then when I was 14, I went to appear for a Hindi examination, Prabhakar, to Delhi. My maternal uncle lived there. And the exam center was in Delhi. We lived only 80 miles from Delhi, so no problem, just motored over. Then one evening, my uncle and auntie, they were invited for dinner to a very humble person's house, a very simple middle class person. And there we met a lady who was an inmate of the ashram, that man's auntie. Her name was probably Dharma Devi. I was 13 or 14 then. So she told us some stories of the mother. And when I was 13, 14, now still I remember two stories which left such a deep impression that I remember them. One day she said that she was cutting vegetables in the dining room. And mother used to give many meditations in those early days at 9 a.m., 10 a.m. And suddenly she remembered that it's time for meditation. And she ran from dining room to the ashram, and her hands were stained with the juice of vegetables. She had no time to wash. And when she reached, I think pranam had started, and mother at once caught hold of both of her hands. This. And second, she said that some Germans had come, or some Europeans, and they were staying in a guest house, ashram guest house. And one evening or night, she told somebody, probably Amrita, go and see, they don't have mattresses. These two simple stories stayed with me all my life. Then the third thing I remember, which is a little more like an experience, I didn't know anything about Sri Aurobindo and the mother till I went on that pilgrimage I told you about last time. So on 6th December 1950, I was in college. Sri Aurobindo had left his body that night, and all the educational institutions in the country, they have a tradition to call a general meeting when some eminent person passes away and talk about. In our college also there was a meeting, and the professors gave lectures and we students sat and heard. And I still remember when I came out of that hall, meeting hall, little distance there was a hedge of lantana. It's a sort of hedge plant with tiny golden berries. And suddenly there were hundreds of tiny white butterflies flying. And these came into my heart, these words. Today there is so much light in the light. Now I understand that it was an experience. And that's why I have never forgotten it. And a spiritual experience which I had throughout my childhood for 15 years. Unluckily, I never wrote it to the mother or asked Nalnida. Only I remembered a few days back that from great, great heights, say from these spaces, a golden spider would come at me throbbing, and would envelop me in its body, and I felt quite uncomfortable. Every night it happened.
I see.
Then a strange thing happened. My father bought us lots of saris and jewelry. And I was 15 hardly. He bought a sari, green silk, covered over with tiny spiders, whole of it. And once I wore that sari, that experience stopped. In the Shastra, they say it represents Brahman, the spider, Brahman consciousness, Urnabha. But it was an experience I used to have frequently. But I never told anybody, never knew, but every night it would envelop me, the golden spider. And these 2 or 3 things I remembered, so I noted down. Now I want to tell you a thing which is not very sweet, but which is very necessary and which is one of the fundamentals of the yoga. There is a most beautiful shloka of Srimad Bhagavad Puran, not Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Puran, where Sri Krishna says, Yasyanugraham ichchami tasya sarvam haramyaham. One on whom I want to bestow my grace, I snatch away everything from him or deprive him of everything. And same the mother has said in another context, in another way, that later on when you remember those famous circumstances, these are 2 words, which gave you so much pain or caused so much upheaval or whatsoever, were the very best thing for your sadhana. She has said again and again, grace is not for making life happy or comfortable according to human notions. It is what makes you advance. So for me, she started very early this process. For example, I was highly censored in my house for not being womanly enough. Though I was only 14, 15, my mother made us embroider dozens of pillowcases, petticoats for our wedding trousseau. And the funny thing is, by the time I was married, they were out of fashion. None of them were used. And she made us embroider day and night and got them embroidered by paying ladies. All loving labor wasted. Then what happened due to that, all the English romantic heroines of Hardy, of all the authors, now I don't remember their names even, I fell madly in love because I could recite 1,000 poems. I drank poetry, ate poetry, lived fiction. I didn't do things because I felt. I did things because I thought they should be done. I should feel miserable because I have failed in love. So even if I am not miserable, I will make myself miserable because it's all the heroines are miserable when they lose their heroes or their love. So anyway, this is a small thing I will mention and pass it on. I fell in love with a professor of mine. I was 15, and he recited beautiful poetry, which we discovered was not his but his friend. And he pretended to be unmarried. And my father employed him to coach me extra. And I fell in love with the poet. Quite an ugly one, but the poetry was so beautiful. He had poke marks all over his face. And then I made him ask my father to ask for my hand. And naturally that was the end. And my father said, we employed you only because we understood you were married. He was married and he had cheated me. So you see, mother started breaking every human dream for me. And this has enabled me to come here so early in life, leaving everything behind without any regrets. Because that was the best thing. Otherwise, suppose he was not married and he was a professor, my father could have married us and I would have 5 children or 4 children even without the name being given the mother as you mentioned just now. And this life would be most probably wasted.
But when you came to the ashram, you also didn't have the easiest time.
No, I had, according to Nalini, as I said just now, things which have happened to you do not happen in this ashram. That I will mention later on. Gradually let us go. So, the worst thing that happened, literature can be poison too. Hindi literature, Hindi mythology, Hindu religion, they did a great disservice to us Hindus and to the nation by the neglect of body. They insisted on tapasya, on terrible tapasyas and to dry the body and leave the body. Body was supposed to be the obstacle in the way of the sadhana. And in literature, there is a great novelist of Bengal, Sharachand Chattopadhyay. He established, a mode of love in his characters where lovers who can't get married to the person they love or are jilted, they die of TB. That was the utmost of love. The famous hero Devdas, he goes at the end to the house where his beloved is married and dies outside his door of TB. Renuka. And I read Sharat's books. I knew them by heart. Hindi translations, wonderful translation in Hindi of every book. So I had a very strong, beautiful body. Beautiful means strength. And I broke it by making myself miserable, not eating, etc. And then I went on that pilgrimage I told you about. This is the end of this thing. And there we had to climb every day 10 kilometers. So I had to eat a lot and I regained my weight which I had lost so purposefully by starving myself and aspiring to get TB and die in the time-honored ways of Bengali novelists. So that was one chapter over. Now, but it is a truth that if you think of Draupadi, you know some Hindi scriptures, how Draupadi suffered though she was the sister of Sakhi of Shri Krishna, how Subhadra's only son died, Shri Krishna's sisters, how his mother Devaki lost, her 7 sons were murdered by Kansa. Everyone who came in contact with the Lord had to suffer. Dashrath died calling the name of Rama. Yashoda didn't see Krishna from the age of 11 when he went to Mathura, leaving Vrindavan, till after he was 86, after Mahabharat war. Then they all met in Kurukshetra. So Sri Radha, she never saw Sri Krishna. This is the way of Lord. Yasyanugraham ichhami tasya sarvam haramyaham. So with me, disenchantments begin quite early. First inner, then outer. Inner disenchantments through books. The love of parents. It plays such a role in our early life. Then I read Wilhelm Meister by Goethe, the novel. I think that was the acme of filial love. And yet, at the age of 120, the parents don't remember even the name of Wilhelm, that we had a son. So it showed me the, unreality of filial love. Then one of the most fragile, idealistic heroines of European literature is Natasha, War and Peace, Tagore's Natasha. In the book starts, she is calling, Pierre, put on your muffler, you will get a cold. And she was truly a fairy-like heroine. Ultimately, the love ends in this, taking care of the body, put on a muffler. Then another, I became a communist. That was not acceptable to the mother. So when I went for that examination where I met Dharma Devi, who told 2 stories about reminiscences of the mother, on that uncle's table I found Paul Brunton's book In Quest of Secret India.
Yes.
I think that's the name. And that put me back on the track, on a spiritual track. And then I got... Secondly, there is a physical hunger, the side of love, sex, what is called like nowadays. I I used to steal books which my uncles, etc., in joint families, they hid from children. Hid means put under pillow or somewhere where nobody gets them. So in one uncle's legal library, I discovered a book, I think the name was Yama the Pit. It was by Alexander Kuprin, a story of Russian brothels. And to read such a brutal story at the age of 14, it breaks so much. You can't have a romantic view of physical love after reading at 14 Yama the Pit. Like this, book after book, a new vista will be opened before me of thought. So, communist was a busted god. Spirituality, mother had said, do not come out of admiration on this path. I told you last time, words of the mother. Then what did I do? I was married. Again, yasyanugraham ichhami tasya sarvam haramyaham. It was a total mismatch, and it was a wonderful match, both together. Total mismatch. My husband was an engineer. He hardly knew any poetry. Maybe he read in matriculation textbooks or intermediate textbooks. He had no hankering for literature or romanticism, and I lived that. So that way it was a mismatch. And it was a wonderful match because he gave me absolute freedom. I came here thrice. And he helped me in my further education. So those two things were important for my growth, further education, because I had not done post-graduation. There was no college in my city, I told last time. And it was the best grace that it was a mismatch. Because if it was a romantic match, I would not be able to leave him. Or he would follow me here. And to top that mismatch, my mother-in-law was a stepmother and quite a storybook stepmother. So they would have, if they had not been like that, they would have followed me here and I would be living like many families here without any independence. And then my husband was so love, sex, family life, no attraction now. I loved my husband, I had a son, he died. Then, but what to do, what to live for? One can live for country's freedom because I was a nationalist now, then and a nationalist now. I love India after only the mother and Shevindo, I love India. Then India was free by the age of, I was 14. So barring shouting slogans in some processions and going to hear leaders, because Delhi was near, so Nehru, Jayaprakash Narayan, all those great leaders of the time, they used to come and speak at public meetings, and we used to go and hear them. And sometimes we were allowed the privilege of serving them dinner, etc., which passing. I have written in Mother India 4 close encounters with Nehru. And Jayaprakash Narayan was a great revolutionary leader, and I had the privilege of sleeping in the car on his arm. When you are 12, it is heaven, meeting your own heroes. So then I saw the life of an officer. Gazetted officers in those days were privileged people. Lots of servants, big bungalows, car, not much money, but so many privileges and perks. And then I thought, what? He is assistant engineer, then he will become executive engineer, then chief engineer, then what? So what? So what? This is the refrain which went in my heart. I will get children, I will get old, children will get children, we will die. So what? What is the use of this life? So I was seeking for a purpose. And the only thing now left was, country was free. Communist was a busted god. I didn't know my soul enough to come to Pondicherry. Then my husband was posted at a place. There is a Roorkee University in North India between Delhi and Haridwar. It's a big university. Now it's an IIT, I think. And he had studied there his engineering, and there he was posted in a course which had 10 or students from 10 or 12 countries of Asia. And we lived, and some from each province. The states were called provinces in those days, from each province of India. And there my drama's prologue was lived, if I can quote one line from Savitri. So we had a very, very romantic life. Romantic not in the emotional sense. There were 80 engineers in that building. And I was the only young one, and I was quite beautiful. I will show you a photograph of that age. Here. Here is the lady at that time. So I was the toast of those 80 young unwed engineers.
Unwed.
They were students.
Ah.
And my husband and his 12 or 15 friends, they were all married from all over Asia and India. Because I know that one of my brother-in-laws was in America, and a friend met him in an elevator in America, and he started talking about me. Now in our university there, and he said, stop, she is my sister-in-law, don't say anything further. That's how I know. There, we had the best life that we could have in our circumstances. There was a club, and there was a mess, and there were all the waiters will pull my chair, stand behind me and serve us. And we, innocent days, nobody drank. We ate kilos of ice cream and table tennis and badminton and watched films. And that is the best in those days. And I changed 3 saris a day for 3 meals going to the mess. Because I had so many. My saris had not gone out of fashion. Only the embroidered petticoats had gone out of fashion. So, then only thing which appealed to me was social service. That if poverty hurt me so much, I thought if everyone, very foolishly, I thought that if everyone gets enough to eat and a house and are well off, the world will be a utopia. So one day the vice chancellor of that university, Dr. Khosla, pro vice chancellor Katpalia, their wives went for social service to a village. It had become fashionable then. And they took me also. They took me along with them. And there something very important happened. We went to visit the house of a farmer. The farmer wanted a loan for a tube well. So we were invited through social service if we can get them a loan. And while sitting in that farmer's house, I had a sort of experience. I relived the past, and suddenly I realized that there were two great philanthropic emperors in India, Ashok and Harsha. They gave away whole of their treasuries, and so many people give so much. But nothing has changed. And suddenly I realized that the problems of the rich are much worse than the problems of the poor. Then, no use social service. Then what to live for? Now nothing was left for me to live up. Then I told my husband, I said he was the best husband for me because he gave me complete freedom. So I said to him, please send me to Pondicherry Ashram. If I discover there something worth living for, I will live. Or I will come back and commit suicide. This is a very stupid world. Eat, dress, play badminton and tennis and sleep and then have children, then grow old. This agenda has no attraction for me. So he must have considered me. I must have been a great trial for him to have such a wife.
What year was this when you asked him?
That was the year 1959, the year of grace for me, when I would arrive in Pondicherry on 19th of February 1959. I was 24 years old. I had lived everything in the world worth living for. So from Roorkee to Haridwar, from there he put me on a train. That train stopped at Delhi. And Mr. and Mrs. Maheshwari, through whom I came to, Maheshwari ji was posted in Delhi. They received me in Delhi. I had informed them and put me on train to Madras, as it was called, Chennai. Now the strange thing happened. Mother started taking care of this foolhardy adventurist. In the mess, I told you there was a common mess where we ate, and my husband had class fellows from every province of India. So Mr. and Mrs. Babington were his colleagues from Madras, that is Chennai. And I told them breezily, I didn't know that Pondicherry is on seashore. I breezily said, I have never seen the sea. In Chennai, I will take a taxi and go to the seashore. They were aghast. You have seen my photograph. This lady alone, not knowing Tamil, she will take a taxi. Anything can happen.
You had told us this last time. You told us this story last time.
Last time?
Yes.
Yes.
So about you coming to Madras.
So that I have told. Mm-hmm. So did I tell the story about my recoming in 1960? Second visit?
No, I don't believe so.
So this I have told. And I told you how there was a lady sitting on a bench and she was from the ashram. Yes. You remember that?
Yes.
So I reached here safely and soundly. And Mr. and Mrs. Maheshwari, their daughter was studying in our school, and she is now an industrialist, quite a big one. And she stayed in Ganpat Ram boarding, that is our cottage. There was a boarding below then. And so I came here and I found everything.
But 19th of February, you must have seen Mother on the 21st.
No, I saw 19th itself because
Ah,
59 she was coming out. She was going
Ah.
to meditation, playground. She stopped in 61 going to playground.
Yes.
I have received toffees from her own hands at least 60 times. I have had her darshan 4 times a day. There was balcony darshan, there was 9 o'clock darshan. Then we went to tennis ground. She played tennis up to 1960. I have seen her playing tennis. Then we all followed her to playground. And there we, at night, then we went to dinner and home. Yeah, I told you that our city had a very bad, ashram had a bad reputation because of espoir marrying for love, and that too a Christian. These are supreme crimes for the society. So I thought I will keep myself safe. And I took 10 hours work from Ravindji. So 3 times I was working at the counter in dining room, and I was working in the fruit room. And that is, I
you
told
us
that
about the fruit room.
about
Yes,
last
yes.
time I told you.
Yes.
So all was well, and I decided. After my first son died, for 5 years doctors had said that I was too ill, I should not have a child soon. So they meant 1 or 2 years. Why I postponed for 5 years, thinking if I have to live in the ashram, what's the use of having a child? So I came here and I was working with Ravindji most of the time in dining room, on his terrace, in the fruit room. And once I had the privilege of washing Mother's tiny juice glasses. They were so tiny, Japanese, this size. And had her prasad many times. Almost every day, Mother used to, she has written somewhere that the sense of taste or desire had left her long ago. So Ravindji used to prepare a sort of paste for her made of almonds and some roasted grain powder, some 2 or 3 things, no salt, no sugar. So it was very difficult to eat it, but he gave us prasad and I ate it. And in this, I will go much fast forward and finish this story of prasad. So when I came back later with my son Kim in 63, 65, once I asked him for some prasad and he scolded me and he didn't give me any. So I went, and that prasad was so hard to eat. Imagine some paste of wheat powder without sugar or salt to it, and Mother ate it every day. So I was so unhappy and went and sat on the staircase of meditation hall and complained to the Mother in my heart. Mother, look why he scolded me like this. And just then, look who comes from upstairs. Have you heard of Keshri Chandji? He was the in charge of our Ayurvedic department who said...
Yes, I knew him.
You knew him?
Kesri
Mal.
Kesri Mal.
Huh. I always confuse. Deven Surekha's father is Keshri Chand.
No, Kesri Mal.
So he and Dr. Sanyal, they had a very beautiful sense of how to go to the mother. They would dress in a spotless white dhoti and kurta, very good cloth. So Kesri Malji used to make some glucose and lemon. With that, he used to make tiny balls, 10 or 12, put them in a plastic box on cotton, and used to take for the mother. And mother would take one or two from them, and rest he would distribute as prasad. I didn't know that. Only that day I went and said, and he spread out his hand towards me, not understanding. He put that ball on my hand and said, Mother's prasad. So as soon as you complain to her, she removes your sorrow. Anyway, that is much afterwards. So in our story, so I came. Then I decided that next, I was so quite stupid. See, I thought because my husband was doing that course in Roorkee University from where I had come, our luggage was packed and kept at my father's place. When you are young, you think very much of your duties and importance. So I thought, how will he unpack? So I will go, his course will be over in a month or two, his new posting will take place, I will unpack everything, and then I will come back forever next year. I never stopped to think, if you are going to leave him forever, he can as well unpack his own luggage. But anyway, that's youth. So I went back, and within 2 or 3 months he was posted to another place, the luggage was unpacked, and then I wrote to Ganpat Ramji that, I have told this story last time, I don't know. Then I wrote to Ganpat Ramji, I want to come forever. Please ask the mother. And then generally my husband never read my letters. That way he was a wonderful person. And even then you write mother's answer in a way that if my husband reads it, he would not understand. Because this I knew, if they get an inkling of my not coming back, I will be tied in iron chains and I will be just not allowed to leave. Not my husband, but my parents. My father wouldn't allow. So he wrote to me, you must come for the first anniversary of the supramental descent on 29th February 1960 and bring all the necessary things like mosquito nets. I took it as acceptance by the mother because all the guest houses, they provided mosquito nets. So last time I didn't take, and there was a mosquito net in the guest house.
You had
So
told us.
this means mother has accepted me. So I tore some of my love letters from that previous life. The fake poet, very eminent man, and later he would become vice chancellor and chief secretary and whatnot. Anyway, so I tore my letters and pegged some letters I have received from eminent poets whose stamp-size photographs I put under my pillow. I had received some letters from him and some things. Then I went to my parents' place, our joint family, and took silent farewell to everybody in the family, because I thought I'm never coming back. And I told my husband, I'm going again, and he was so wonderful, he allowed me to come. And this time, again the brother-in-law of that man, Mr. Babington, he put me on a bus to Pondicherry, and Ganpat Ram's son, Ward, received me, and I came.
I
Then-
think that's a good place to stop for today.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we could pick up
Huh.
with your arrival in Pondicherry next time.
Yes.
And we would like to hear more about your vignettes of so many people in the ashram
Next time.
next time. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shyam Kumari.